the Marquis of Yen married me out of gratitude, yet treated me coldly for years, making me the famously neglected Marquis of Shangyang. He fought fiercely for his beloved, capturing 10 cities in succession, yet turned me into a laughingstock across Yen territory. On the night I prepared to divorce him, I was reborn. Back to the day the Marquis of Yen was publicly forced to marry me out of gratitude. With a graceful curtsy, I declined. My character is unworthy of being the Marquis of Yan's wife. Instead, Marquis of Yen, take me as your sworn sister. The gates of Shangyang opened wide. Soldiers galloped through the city, proclaiming to all, "Great victory! The Marquis of Yen returns. The Marquis of Yen triumphs." Lights gradually flickered on, from the majestic Shangyang Palace within the inner city to the bustling streets and markets of the outer city. Not only was Shangyang Palace abuzz with preparations to welcome the Marquis, but the people of Yen also poured into the streets, all eager to catch a glimpse of their mighty lord. Who didn't know that Yan Shuo, the ruler of Yen, had captured 10 cities in a single campaign, earning him the title of a natural military star? Yet what people talked about most regarding this battle was its origin. The Marquis of Yen, determined to rescue Princess Suha trapped in Guangzhou, mustered his troops overnight and seized 10 cities in one decisive campaign, all to bring her home. Since ancient times, great generals have been paired with beauties. The Marquis of Yen, barely in his 20s, radiated the fiery spirit of a warrior amidst his golden spears and iron horses. Princess Suha, equally renowned as a beauty of the Central Plains, who wouldn't call this a perfect match born of chaos? If I were not Yan Shuo's wife of many years, I too would have cherished such a tale. Whenever the Marquis of Yen returned, regardless of the battle's scale or the hour, even amidst heavy snow, I would trudge through the snow to wait for him outside the city gates hours before his arrival. But now, I merely sit on the white dew terrace, built high within the palace, gazing down at the brightly lit city of Shangyang, my mind drifting in the long procession of the Yen Marquis's personal guard. The black armor army, a plain white sedan chair is being escorted. I know who that is. It is Princess Suha. And so it was certain that Yan Shuo rode his black stallion, guarding her on either side. Palace maids from Shangyang Palace hurried along the corridors, trays in hand, whispering excitedly to one another. The night wind carried their voices to my ears. I wondered what kind of woman Princess Suha was. That upon learning she was trapped, the Marquis immediately mustered his troops for a nighttime campaign, even designating the treasuries of 10 cities as her personal storehouses. Such overwhelming favoritism would envy all women under heaven. I heard from an elderly palace attendant that Princess Suha is not only as beautiful and kind as a goddess, but also accompanied the Marquis through his difficult youth. After years apart, their sudden reunion explains the Marquis's actions. Such a beautiful tale. Yet suddenly, a young palace maid stammered out of nowhere. "But your lordship already had a lady consort. She adored him so deeply. How will she bear this now?" The people of Shangyang Palace knew 2 things. First, the Marquis of Yen married the daughter of a loyal minister who had died in his service, taking her as his lady consort to repay that debt. Second, the lady consort did not hold the Marquis's affection. I knew Lord Yen married me out of gratitude, but I married him with a heart full of love. Raised in the countryside until I was 15, I knew I couldn't compare to the noble ladies of Yen, much less Princess Suha who captivated the Central Plains. Yet I loved Yan Shuo deeply. I patiently mastered the intricate court protocols to become a consort who wouldn't burden him. I journeyed 1,000 miles through blizzards to find renowned physicians for his injuries, nearly freezing to death myself. Each time he returned from battle, I waited in Shangyang Palace, holding a lamp aloft, greeting him with a radiant smile. Yan Shuo's coldness didn't matter. My mother said hearts are warmed by genuine affection. I always say these years haven't been wasted. On our wedding night, Yan Shuo wouldn't even look at me. Yet now we share the same bed. But then came that night months ago. He received a secret dispatch from Wanzhong. He abruptly rose from the bed, grabbed his sword, donned his armor, and left me only with the sight of his back disappearing into the night beyond the gate. After that, battle reports came one after another, capturing one city, then 5 cities, welcoming Princess Sushi. The Marquis of Yen flew into a rage, a tale that became legendary across the land. Only then did I realize. Yen Shua had always been devoted. But that fury boiling over, it wasn't for me. Only then did I understand. Heaven's matchmaking follows its own destiny, it cannot be forced. When the Marquis of Yen returned, I knew celebrations and banquets would be inevitable, as would meetings with the court officials of Yen. So I retreated to my chambers, flipping through the palace ledgers while waiting for him. I'd barely begun reading when I heard the palace maid bowing low outside. I lifted my head. The night wind swept through the beaded curtains, rushing straight toward me. The Marquis of Yen strode into the bedchamber. His steps hurried. Only when he was 3 paces before me did he slow to a halt. His eyes fixed intently on me. It had been nearly a year since we last met. Yen Shua arrived dusty and weary, his silver armor stained with blood. He had grown darker and thinner, yet his eyes held an even greater resolve, radiating a newfound vigor and spirit. I had the words "Your Highness" on my lips when he suddenly stepped forward, kneeling on one knee before the low table beside me. He reached across it to clasp my face. A scorching kiss landed hastily on my eyes. Then my cheeks. I tried to turn my face away, but couldn't struggle at all. The stacks of ledgers piled on the table annoyed him. He swept them all onto the floor. Before Yen Shua's campaign, our relationship had reached its best point in years. It was the beginning of thawing ice and melting snow. Though Yen Shua gradually found pleasure in our bedchamber, he remained quite restrained, never displaying such passion outwardly as he did now. So ardent before the palace maids. I gradually found it hard to breathe. Yet suddenly, I caught the faint, cool scent of a rare perfume on his neck. This fragrance was exceedingly rare, priceless. Years ago, to make up for my absence during my childhood, my father had purchased an inch of it for me. Its high price stemmed from the fact that Princess Suha had personally crafted it, a scent like plum blossoms and snow. It instantly snapped me out of my dazed confusion. Like a handful of cold snow, it crashed down upon me, whispering close to my ear. Yen Shua murmured hoarsely. After months of campaigning, we captured many cities and treasures. I had Suha select the finest pieces and had them loaded onto over 10 carriages for you. Which would you like to see first? I pushed his face back an inch, finally gaining a sliver of breathing room. Yet I said, "Your Excellency." He hadn't heard clearly and leaned in again, intending to kiss me. But he caught the words I repeated, and froze instantly. Tears welled in my eyes. I was also astonished that I had actually spoken those words. I said, "Your Excellency, I wish to divorce." His iron armor glistened coldly. Yen Shuayuan had already been displeased that I hadn't gone to meet him, after repeatedly demanding a kiss and being refused. His expression now turned icy. He abruptly stood up, staring at me with equal parts humiliation and disbelief. My hair was disheveled, yet I pulled a divorce petition from the pile of ledgers. I had this divorce petition prepared long ago. These years have been unfulfilling for both of us. I have also failed to bear an heir for the Yen royal family, which is a failure of duty. If we sign this divorce petition tonight, I will leave tomorrow morning. I will take nothing but my original dowry. I collapsed to the floor. Yet I heard Yen Shua stare at me and say, "You've been unhappy?" I suppressed the bitterness welling up, lifted my head quietly, and replied, "Yes. I have been unhappy." Yen Shua pressed his lips together, his expression darkening to an unbearable degree. He crumpled the divorce papers and hurled them onto the table, Still unsatisfied. Drawing his sword, he sliced through both the papers and the tabletop in one stroke. His voice was icy. "You're unhappy? Wasn't it your Wei family who used your father's death to force me into this marriage?" I knelt on the floor, too ashamed to lift my head. Had the Wei family not leveraged their favor for repayment, Yan Shuo would never have married me. This union was a mistake from the very beginning. Yan Shuo stormed out in fury. Before sleep, my face was streaked with tears. Yet upon waking, something felt off. I was clad in mourning white. Even my maidservants dressed in white. My sister-in-law held me close, urging me to compose myself. I touched my eyes, they were swollen too. This scene, if not a dream, could only mean one thing: I had reborn, returning to my father's funeral. That year, I was only 16, barely half a year after being brought from the countryside to Shenyang City. Just as I began to depend on and grow close to my father, he died protecting the newly enthroned Marquis of Yan Shuo. It was also in that year, the elders of the Wei family forced the Marquis of Yan, who had come to escort the coffin, to marry me, elevating the Wei family's standing in Yan territory. In my previous life, I was merely a young girl newly arrived in Shenyang, ignorant of the ways of the world. My eyes were red from weeping over my father's death, and I knew only that after this night, the Marquis of Yan would take me as his wife. It was only after the marriage that I learned the truth behind it all. Yan Shuo sought to repay a debt of gratitude, but certainly not by marrying me. The morning dew was cool as I hurried toward the funeral hall, determined only to avoid repeating the past and rekindling a bitter bond. Panting, I arrived to find. I found the memorial hall tense, the atmosphere as taut as a stretched string. The clan elders refused to close the coffin, wailing incessantly as they declared to Yan Shuo, "If you do not marry my daughter from the Wei family, her father will never rest in peace. We will not close this coffin." They vowed to carry this unsealed coffin to the gates of Shenyang City, so all might see what kind of man the new Marquis of Yan truly was. Yan Shuo stood nearby, flanked by 2 or 3 trusted aides. All wore grim expressions. A large crowd had gathered to watch, with the Marquis of Yan ascending his seat. Rival powers glared hungrily from all sides, internal troubles and external threats loomed. Such blackmail, though despicable, proved effective. A peer of the realm, forced into this corner by public blackmail. Just as he was about to yield, I burst into the funeral hall and knelt prostrate on the ground. Shaking my head, I said, "There are countless ways to repay kindness. I'm just a country-raised girl who knows nothing. With such character and abilities, how could I ever be worthy of being the Marquis of Yan's wife?" Lifting my head, I met Yan Shuo's astonished gaze for the first time. Holding back tears, I whispered softly, "Instead, why not take me as your sworn sister?" The clan elders' expressions darkened instantly, yet the surrounding crowd nodded in agreement. Yan Shuo and his confidants beside him also softened their stares. Having another unrelated sworn sister was far preferable to another wife, especially one shackled by the Wei family's opportunistic marriage alliances. It would also cement the new Marquis of Yan's reputation for treating the daughter of a fallen loyalist with kindness, a perfect outcome. Yan Shuo pondered only a moment before accepting on the spot. "Because of me, you lost your beloved father. I cannot undo that. But from now on, I shall be your brother, though of different blood. I, Yan Shuo, will protect you for the rest of your life." I knew the Marquis of Yan valued his word. He would surely keep his promise and care for me as he said. After a brief silence, I bowed in gratitude. The heavy stone of guilt in my heart finally rolled to the ground. From this day forward, Yan Shuo and I need not be entangled in years of mutual discomfort over a mere marriage contract. Yan Shuo has his beloved. I, too, can seek a true partner who welcomes me with sincerity. Only thus can we set things right and part ways cleanly. I exhaled deeply, preparing to leave, when Yan Shuo called out, "Wait." I turned back to see him frowning, seemingly puzzled by the words of restraint that had slipped from his lips. He gazed deeply at me. Yet in the end, all he managed to say was, "The night is deep and the dew heavy. Take care, my sworn sister." The newly appointed Marquis Yan not only personally carried the coffin of the late loyal minister to his burial, but also took the minister's orphaned daughter as his sworn sister. Who could witness this and not speak of the king's boundless grace? Paper offerings fluttered along the path, the auspicious hour to carry the coffin out and lay it to rest. This wasn't my first experience with my father's funeral rites. Yet reliving it a lifetime later still left a dull ache in my heart. Whispered murmurs drifted from beside me, faint yet deliberately loud enough for my ears. They were several distant cousins from the Wei family, not particularly close to me, still resentful over my earlier refusal of the Yan Marquis' marriage proposal, a decision that defied the clan's wishes. What a mud-covered country bumpkin! The clan elders arranged such a splendid match for her. Instead of becoming a proper noble lady, she insists on choosing some worthless adopted sister. It's laughable. Rumor has it she's cursed. That's why her father sent her to the countryside. See? It's true. She's only been back in Shenyang for half a year, and she's already cursed her father to death. What a pity for the Wei Chancellor, a single life traded for this. Before I could finish, I swung my foot, kicking the nearest cousin sister in the shin. Withdrawing my leg, I aimed another kick at another. They hadn't expected me to resort to violence in public, and all cried out in pain as they tumbled backward. When they turned to look at me, disbelief filled their eyes. This funeral was attended by the Marquis himself, with all the powerful and influential figures of Yen present to pay their respects. Moreover, I had just returned to Shenyang and was most afraid of being labeled uncouth, cautious and self-conscious. I avoided conflict whenever possible. Who could have imagined I'd dare kick someone in public? The commotion was so great that everyone turned to look. The Marquis of Yen and the clan elders at the front glanced over. Catching the moment, I withdrew my leg. I crouched down, grabbed one cousin by the collar with each hand, and forced them to kowtow several times before my father's coffin. The air filled with the cries and sobs of the women. The clan elder's face flushed crimson as he pointed at me, shouting, "Wei man! How dare you show such disrespect before your father's spirit?" Yet Yan Shuo suddenly glanced sideways at him. It was merely a casual glance. Yet the elder instantly broke out in cold sweat. The sole daughter of Minister Wei, the sworn sister of the Marquis of Yen, equivalent to royalty. How could he presume to rebuke her? I released my grip. Strands of hair still clutched between my fingers, torn from the heads of the Wei cousins by my forceful pull. As I straightened, Yan Shuo's gaze fell upon me. He had witnessed my entire crude display. In my past life, I had curried favor before him, knowing he disdained such reckless behavior in women. Yet, after only a moment's pause, our eyes met. I lowered mine, about to explain the situation. Had their words not dragged my father into their insults, I would not have been so enraged. But then, the Marquis of Yen reached out to me. He pulled me toward him, shielding me behind his back. Turning to the Wei family, he uttered a single, icy question, his tone uncompromising. With the Minister of State just sacrificed for the nation, how could your Wei family treat my sworn sister so harshly, driving a fragile woman to such desperation that she lost control during her father's funeral? The tide turned, especially for those Wei cousins still kneeling on the ground, clutching their bleeding foreheads. They almost thought they'd heard wrong. Fragile woman? Who? I lifted my head and could still see the Yen Marquis' jaw clenched in suppressed fury. He had clearly witnessed my actions with his own eyes. Yet he stood by me without hesitation. Yan Shuo tilted his head. "Don't be afraid. From now on, No matter what wrongs you face, your sworn brother will stand behind you. Though meant as comfort, his words carried the inherent pride of a noble. A promise made by Yan Shuo was a promise kept. I let my lips curve slightly, my mind drifting. Yan Shuo truly was a good man. It was just such a pity that past life had brought that ill-fated marriage. Having Yan Shuo take me as his sworn sister was merely a convenient excuse to repay his kindness. It needn't have been taken so seriously. Yet that day, Yan Shuo not only confronted the Wei family on my behalf, but later assigned his personal guards to protect my travels. Countless treasures of gold, silver, and jewels were delivered to my hands, and he even reserved a residence for me within Xiangyang Palace. Not only did the Wei family treat me with the utmost care, as if I were their true royal princess, but everyone in Xiangyang City knew it. Wei Man, the late Chancellor Wei's daughter, even after her father died for the country, leaving her an orphan, she was no one to be taken advantage of or bullied. Behind Wei Man stood her sworn brother, Yan Shuo, the new Marquis of Yan. Yet as the newly appointed Marquis, Yan Shuo was overwhelmed with duties. 2 months passed without a single meeting. By the time he found a window in his schedule, snow had already fallen in Yan territory. He carved out 2 days to take me to the Yan ancestral lands to pay respects to our forebears, then inscribed my name in the clan hall. This marked the formal recognition of his sworn sister. On a day of heavy snowfall, we set out with light carriages and simple provisions. Though the journey was hasty, the carriage I rode in was warm and cozy. After traveling for several days, I lifted the curtain. Blizzards of wind and snow rolled in, and Yan Shuo, leading 2 or 3 personal guards on horseback, rode ahead with solemn expressions. The sound of the curtain lifting was almost inaudible amidst the journey. Yet Yan Shuo sensed it instantly. He tightened his grip on the horse's flank, drawing it closer to the carriage to shield it from the surging wind. He asked, "Tired from the journey?" I shook my head, gazing at him. "Brother, I am not weary, but you truly must find an inn tonight to rest properly." Yan Shuo was barely 20, in the prime of his strength. Traveling through days of heavy snow was nothing unusual. Yet these past 2 months, he'd worked day and night handling state affairs, welcoming new ministers, and exhausting himself. He hadn't had a single good night's sleep, and weariness was etched between his brows. He was relying solely on his youth to keep going. That's why in my past life, despite being only a few years older and having survived the battlefield's perils, he developed headaches by his early 20s. Only then did Yan Shuo realize I was referring to his current state of exhaustion. Yet he shrugged it off indifferently. "I am the ruler of Yan. I'm no weak scholar incapable of bearing burdens. What hardship is too much for me to endure?" Yan Shuo was never one to heed advice. In my past life, even as his wife, I had to resort to tricks to sway his resolve. I'd long since given up trying. Now, as merely his sworn sister, I could only offer a suggestion. Forcing him to sleep was out of the question. I said no more, quietly lowering the carriage curtain. It blocked out the snowy curtain and the self-important face of the Marquis of Yan. Silence settled instantly. I was already drowsy, so I drifted off for a short nap. Yet I sensed Yan Shuo circling my carriage on horseback, repeatedly trying to speak to me. I couldn't think of anything to say to him, so I closed my eyes and pretended not to notice. It wasn't until we stopped for lunch that I stepped out of the carriage. Just then, I overheard Yan Shuo inquiring with his guards about nearby inns. Startled, I looked up and met his gaze, dark as ink, which seemed to fall upon me casually. He ordered, "Afternoon. We ride to the inn. Rest for 2 days to replenish our strength before continuing." The guards, who had prepared for roughing it on the road, were both stunned and delighted. Yet Yan Shuo approached me with a stern face, his expression inevitably gloomy. Who could have imagined my sworn sister would have such a temper? daring to give the new Yen Marquis a cold shoulder, then slamming the carriage curtain shut. When he reached my side, he shielded me from the blowing wind and snow. It was clearly a gesture of concession. Yet his concern came out stiff. Get into the carriage sooner. Take care not to catch cold. He was still reluctant. After all, marching and fighting meant months on the road with no rest. This was merely a 2-day journey, hardly taxing for me. I knew how grueling his campaigns were. That's why in my past life, whenever he returned from battle, I'd wait outside Xiangyang Palace with a lantern, through spring and winter. Rain or shine. I lifted my head and smiled, my eyes earnest. I know how hard you labor for the people of Yen. In time, your military strategist and your wife will surely urge you to rest. But while they are absent, it falls to me, your convenient sworn sister, to worry for you. How can you protect us if you don't rest well, brother? Wind and snow tangled his temples. Yet after gazing at my smiling face for 2 moments, the Marquis of Xinyan curled his hand within his sleeve and abruptly turned away. His hurried footsteps echoed across the snowy field before I caught the stiff words he tossed back. Understood. Don't throw tantrums at me next time, little sister. He had spoken these words in my past life too. Back then, we had been married for over 2 years. He was constantly away on military campaigns, and our time together was scarce. Compounding this, Yan Shua had never truly accepted marrying me. Even though I threw myself at him wholeheartedly, our relationship remained lukewarm. The Yen Marquis's cold demeanor was known to all. The first time I sensed a shift in his attitude toward me was during the spring hunt. When envoys from Yen territories presented beauties to Yan Shua, he merely nodded indifferently. For the latter half of the banquet, I not only refused to speak to Yan Shua but scarcely glanced his way. Even if the Marquis of Yen was cold, I was usually fiery. Now that I had gone quiet, he could sense something was off. He glanced back several times, only to meet my cold stare. But noticing was one thing, being willing to appease someone was quite another. After the banquet, we headed to the hunting grounds. There were stone steps along the way that were difficult to navigate. I stumbled slightly, but Yan Shua steadied me firmly. He crouched before me, gesturing for me to climb onto his back. A noble lord. Yet he stooped to carry me. Mountains stretched vast and misty, stone steps layered with moss. Leaning against his back, I couldn't tell if the heartbeat I heard was my own or his. In over 2 years of marriage, I'd mostly seen his hurried retreats and distant expressions. This was the first time he'd responded like this. For a moment, tears threatened to spill. Yan Shua said, I've never been fond of beauties, but my soldiers remain unmarried and clamor for wives. That's why I kept the beauties they presented. He added, next time you're unhappy, speak up. If you ignore me. The 20-year-old Marquis of Yen suddenly felt a lump in his throat. For the first time, he tasted the torment of love and admitted, I too can be hurt. The Marquis of Yen had originally changed his plans, intending to rest at the relay station for 2 days. However, a new urgent official dispatch arrived, compelling him to rush to Wuyang City. Traveling through the night, through the snow, an assassination attempt occurred. The wind whistled, horses neighed, followed by the clashing of swords and the sounds of battle. I curled up in the corner of the carriage, drenched in cold sweat, knowing that staying silent was the only way not to cause further trouble. After an unknown length of time, a sword slashed open the curtain, and a hand reached in to pull me out. Yan Shua shielded me in his embrace, leaping onto a horse. The blood from his wounds seeped through my clothes. Peering over his shoulder, I saw the ground littered with fallen bodies. The snow and blood mingling. This place was no longer safe. Yet after riding 2 li, Yan Shua suddenly slumped backward. With his last ounce of strength, he pulled the reins, and we both tumbled. rolling through the snow. Struggling to my feet. I saw his face pale. Eyes tightly shut. His final words were clear. He was telling me to go on ahead. Of course. I couldn't obey him. Fortunately, having grown up in the countryside, I knew horses well. I had the horse lie down first, then gritted my teeth and strained every ounce of strength to hoist Yan Shua onto the saddle. Supporting him against me, I remounted and rode on. Frost bit my face, the snowy wilderness stretched endlessly. I had no idea how far we'd ridden when the blood from the rain's gashes on my hands had long since congealed. When the horse finally collapsed from exhaustion, I used the dagger at Yan Shua's waist to slit its throat. I drank a mouthful of its blood myself, then fed Yan Shua several sips. At last, his complexion regained a hint of color, filling a water skin with the collected blood. I half-carried, half-dragged Yan Shua through the treacherous terrain of the snow-covered forest. We found shelter in a mountain cave. I lit a fire for warmth and tended to Yan Shua's wounds. When he awoke, I was covered in grime. Shoes off. Socks stained with congealed black blood. My calves bore countless scratches from thorns hidden in the snow as we fled into the woods. Yan Shua frowned, his expression dazed. Though unconscious, he hadn't been entirely unaware. He'd endured countless attacks, but this was the first time a woman had shielded him as they fled deep into the woods. Who else would have fed him a mouthful of horse blood? Using cold, soft lips. A sudden jolt ran through him. I glanced back, only to see Yan Shua's eyes snap shut again. Still unaware, I offered a relieved reassurance. Thankfully, my sworn brother is unharmed. I just went out and caught a snow hare. I've already skinned it, we'll roast it for dinner. Drink some of this horse blood to warm yourself first. Then follow the river downstream. There are a few households there. Once the snow stops, we'll ask for shelter. Outside the cave, the world was frozen in ice and snow. Inside, however, the fire made it warm and comfortable. The woman's voice was gentle, without a trace of resentment or complaint. With his eyes still closed, Yan Shua spoke, his voice seeming softened by the fire. Wei man, Changyang City couldn't have raised a daughter like you. I froze, only then realizing what kind of image I must hold in Yan Shua's heart now. The one who once kicked her cousin in anger, who dared slit a horse's throat for its blood, a wild, untamed girl through and through. In my past life, I truly resented this aspect of myself. For Princess Suha, whom Yan Shua had cherished for years, lived up to her title, a refined and elegant lady. Back then, newlywed to the Marquis of Yan, it was rather laughable and absurd. Having heard palace maids speak of Princess Suha, I'd sought to emulate her, hoping to win Yan Shua's favor. I copied her plain attire, her poetry and prose. Not only did it prove useless with Yan Shua, but the palace attendants mocked the new lord's wife for being nothing but a poor copycat. Eventually, I simply returned to being myself. Yan Shua's attitude toward me actually improved. But it was only much later that I understood what kind of personality I possessed was utterly irrelevant to the Marquis of Yan. If he didn't like it, he didn't like it. It was all futile effort, all forced and contrived. Now, I merely smiled softly to myself. I said quietly, I wasn't raised in Shangyang. Naturally, I can't compare to those noble ladies. The flickering campfire illuminated half of Yan Shua's face. His throat moved as he replied, No. Startled, I looked up. In the shifting light, Yan Shua gazed at me, his eyes deep and turbulent. You are better than all of them. When the snow ceased and dawn broke, we followed the river downstream, seeking lodging at a farmer's cottage. That night, Yan Shua's body grew feverish. His wounds were poisoned to begin with, enduring this long was already remarkable. Yet the village had no physician, and in the vast snowy wilderness, Finding a doctor was no easy task. I entrusted the elderly woman of the village to care for my gravely ill brother and resolved to brave the snow in search of a physician. But as I turned, Yan Shuo, burning with fever on the bed, seized my wrist. Words forced from his throat, each syllable deliberate. "You must not go. This is my command." I turned back. I know I cannot defy my sworn brother. Yet I must defy him. Should any harm come to you here, I shall bear the blame for 10,000 deaths. I wrenched my hand free from Yan Shuo's grasp and plunged into the blizzard. It wasn't that I wasn't afraid. It was that I believed I could do this. In my past life, I had even traveled 1,000 miles to find a doctor for Yan Shuo. When his head ailment flared, I heard of an old master in Yingchuan renowned for treating such conditions. I rode through the night to seek him out. The journey was arduous, and even my personal guards were scattered along the way. Yet I still found the divine physician. Now I am alone, but with caution and vigilance, it may still be possible. Fortunately, heaven protected me. I encountered no bandits or wolves along the way and reached the city directly. Presenting my jade pendant, I knocked directly on the gate of the garrison commander. The mere mention of Marquis Yan was attacked sent a cold sweat down his back. Within half an hour, the city's finest physicians were summoned. To avoid drawing attention, the commander specially selected a small band of elite soldiers, and we hurried straight to the village. With skilled physicians and potent medicine, and Yan Shuo being in the prime of his health, the fever quickly subsided. Yet for recuperation, movement was unwise, so he temporarily settled in this humble village dwelling. However, even as the Marquis of Yan recovered, no one dared breathe easy. The entire village froze under his dark, brooding expression. No sooner had his wounds healed than he turned his wrath upon me, furious beyond measure, declaring, "When I was attacked, I ordered you to abandon me and flee. Yet you refused. Last night, amidst heavy snow, with vicious wolves lurking and refugees fleeing, I issued a strict command forbidding you to leave, yet you insisted on going out. Do you know that after you departed, I lay in bed consumed by panic and self-reproach? I blamed myself for my incompetence. Had you suffered even the slightest harm, how could I have faced Lord Wei? I turned my head away. Not a word. This scene, this moment, it was exactly like a past life. Identical in every detail. Back then, when I traveled 1,000 miles to find a doctor for the Marquis of Yan, after bringing back the divine healer, I was instead met with a torrent of his scolding. I stubbornly retorted, if my father knew I would devote myself to serving his lordship with such dedication, he would only be pleased. How could I possibly not be able to account for it to him? My words left the cold-hearted Yan Marquis momentarily speechless. Only as he departed did he bitterly utter, "Then you truly care not whether I live or die. Should you perish, I shall find no reason to linger." Recalling this now, I found myself lost in thought. How much genuine concern for me lay beneath Yan Shuo's fury back then? Yet the past cannot be reclaimed, the answer remains forever unknown. I lifted my head. Yan Shuo was about to press further, but upon seeing the tears welling in my eyes, his tone abruptly softened. I muttered, "I understand, sworn brother." The commander had hunted a wild deer, which they roasted and shared in the farmhouse courtyard. The old woman of the house dug out 2 jars of aged wine. Everyone gathered around the fire. The atmosphere unusually relaxed. I took a small sip of wine and turned to look for Yan Shuo, though seated in the place of honor. He leaned in the shadows, examining a dagger by the firelight. His expression was calm, jarringly out of place amidst the surrounding clamor. I recognized that dagger. It had belonged to one of Yan Shuo's personal guards, killed in the snow during an assassination attempt. Yan Shuo's first year on the throne had been anything but easy, a whirlwind of open and covert struggles. Blades flashing in the shadows, Countless loyal supporters and trusted ministers had perished in the turmoil. People spoke of the new Yen Marquis as ruthless and decisive. They forgot he hadn't even reached adulthood yet. I moved cautiously toward him and offered a cup of green wine. It's quite good. Your lordship. Why not try it? Yen Shuo looked up, met only my smile, then turned back to join the lively conversation by the fire. That smile seemed fleeting, like a glimmer of light. Subtle, yet it instantly freed him from the atmosphere of hatred. Beside the fire, several young military officers sat near the city commander. They nudged a flushed young officer, who, after swallowing some wine, finally spoke to me. Miss Man, there's a rare green plum blossom within the city walls. Might you be interested? I'd be honored to accompany you. The youth's eyes were clear and bright, his expression earnest and upright. My eyelashes fluttered. Indeed, I had no betrothal, and would eventually seek a husband. This young man before me was exceptional, why not consider him first? But then, a sharp click sounded beside me, and everyone turned in alarm. The Marquis of Yen had plunged his dagger into a deer bone, slicing the meat with the force of a warrior wielding his weapon. Yen Shuo raised his phoenix-like eyes. I wonder if the soldiers guarding the lower pass are all so idle that they have time to admire flowers. Besides, with this fierce wind and heavy snow, what if my sworn sister, a lady of delicate constitution, catches a chill? The elderly commander quickly stepped in to smooth things over, first chastising the young officer for his rashness, then steering the conversation back on track. The atmosphere grew lively once more. Someone, emboldened by drink, ventured to ask Yen Shuo, my lord, might you, like any other young man, have a lady in your heart? The fire crackled. Several moments passed. Yen Shuo hesitated. Yes. She's unlike others, more vibrant, bold enough to cry and scold me. Yet she's a fine girl. In my 20 years, such a headache-inducing yet joyful feeling has been rare. I suppose this is what it means to be taken with someone. I glanced sideways at the fire, momentarily lost in thought. I only knew Suha to be elegant and gentle, a description that seemed to clash with these words. Just then, an old woman from the village came to refill our wine, murmuring to herself, Your Excellency has no wife, and Miss Man has no husband. It's a pity Your Excellency has someone in mind. And they are sworn brother and sister. That night when they knocked seeking shelter, I thought they were some noble couple who'd fled their home. Her voice was soft, the scattered words drifting in the light smoke from the fire, settling into who knows whose heart. In the latter part of the evening, I spoke less. I drank more of the green wine than usual. Half drunk, half awake, someone took my cup away. Unable to open my eyes, I instinctively clung to his arm, only to feel his body suddenly tense. He gazed at me for a long time before reaching out, using the back of his hand to gently wipe the wine stains from my face. Hands accustomed to blades and spears were, for a moment, tender and patient. I forced my eyes open, only to meet Yen Shuo's dark, star-like gaze, burning hot. Dazed, I murmured, brother. The word jolted him awake. He was her nominal sworn brother. The Marquis had no wife, and Man had no husband. But to Man, he was merely a sworn brother. Yen Shuo flinched, released his hand, and abruptly stood up, taking 2 steps back. He had overstepped. He had dreamed of a past life. Born into nobility, Yen Shuo possessed the proudest spirit, loathing being coerced and detesting being forced. Even if the Wei family had pushed me into the position of the prince's consort, they gained nothing. Instead, Yen Shuo held it against them. All Wei family members holding official positions were stripped of their posts for minor errors, leaving them with nothing but the empty title of royal in-laws. After all, my father died for the country. And Yan Shuo wasn't the type to hold a grudge against me personally. Yet in the first few years of our marriage, he was constantly away on military campaigns. Even when he returned to Shangyang, his gaze scarcely graced me. Yet I loved him. So I often sought counsel from the wet nurse Yan Shuo held in highest esteem. Sometimes I'd leap with joy at a small kindness he showed me, other times I'd fret over mistakes that angered him. She would only smile at me and say, "Lady June, the Marquis does love you. But he's been proud since childhood. You must wait for him a little longer. Young spouses, especially a stubborn one like the Marquis, need time to adjust." I suspected she merely spoke to comfort me. Yet I was not oblivious. Take, for instance, his homecomings after victory. In the early years of our marriage, I would wait at the gates of Shangyang Palace. Willow catkins would blow across my face. Yet he would ride past on horseback, his gaze fixed straight ahead, never once looking my way. Later, he would offer a slight nod when he saw me, exchanging a few words. Later still, when the ice melted and snow thawed, he'd dismount before reaching the palace gates, watching me as he strode toward me. But that thaw didn't last long. Then came the matter with Suha. This time in my dream, I dreamt once more of Yan Shuo's wet nurse's quarters, though I myself did not appear. Beneath the tall jade willow tree, the wet nurse sat in her usual spot. Where I had once sat countless times now sat Yan Shuo. His face grim, still clad in his iron armor. He carried the aura of a warrior fresh from the battlefield. Yet he looked utterly lost and dejected. The night air on the palace steps was as cool as water. The wet nurse saw through his thoughts but feigned a question. "Your Excellency has captured 10 cities in succession and brought Princess Suha back. Why come to this old woman's quarters in such gloom at life's triumphant moment?" Yan Shuo pressed his lips together. He forced the words through gritted teeth, each one piercing like a dagger. After victory, my heart raced homeward. I wished not to linger a single day longer. I journeyed day and night, rushing back only to see her sooner. Yet she told me she wished to divorce me. She said these years had been unbearable. At the mention of divorce, he nearly leapt to his feet, ready to chop down every willow before him. The wet nurse pressed further, "But my lord, do you not know why Lady Yan speaks of divorce only now? The whole city whispers you waged war for Princess Suha, brought her back triumphantly. What must she have thought?" Yan Shuo furrowed his brow and looked up, rebutting in confusion. "I wonder which penniless scholar concocted such an absurd and ridiculous tale. Waging war on 2 fronts, risking the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, how could I, a man of honor, mobilize such forces for a woman? Such rumors are best ignored. Let the fools believe them. But man is so wise, how could she take them to heart?" That secret dispatch from Guangzhou was delivered by my spy. It stated that the Li family father and son were absent, presenting a chance to seize the city. Such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, how could I let it slip? Suha was also trapped in Guangzhou. Rescuing her would be convenient. Though she bears no common surname with me. She is still, he suddenly fell silent. Then amended, blood-related to me. What harm is there in saving her? These matters of state and palace intrigues, why should they concern a woman? The old wet nurse replied. "She is not merely a woman, Your Highness. She is your wife. If you conceal things from her, a rift will surely form. If the lady feels dissatisfied, it is undoubtedly because you have not done enough." Yan Shuo remained silent. In the early years of their marriage, it was his pride. Later, as time wore on, though he knew she was full of goodness, he still did as he pleased. Now, looking back, he realized he had forced her to please him at every turn, making her compromise in everything. Her unhappiness was his fault. After a long silence, he said, "I tore up the divorce papers. I'll go find her at dawn. I love her. I will not divorce her." The jade steps were chilled to the bone. The Marquis of Yen, weary from his journey, sat gazing at the star-filled sky. All my life, I have hated being coerced. All my life, I have hated making concessions. Yet for the first time, I felt such profound relief that I had been bound by a debt of gratitude into this marriage. From now on, I have a beloved woman and a vast, beautiful realm. I need not be lonely. At dawn, I awoke in a daze, unsure if the dream was reality or merely a figment of my imagination. As I stepped outside, I happened upon Yen Shua drilling the young military officers. Each was exhausted to the point of collapse. Yet none dared complain or call for a break. Spotting me, Yen Shua turned and called out, Man. Yen Shua's wounds had largely healed, and he was determined to set out. His eyes and brows radiated sharp resolve, making it clear he intended to settle accounts with those behind the assassination attempt once he returned, signaling more upheaval in the court. I couldn't help but worry and checked his wounds again. Brother, please don't overexert yourself. After days of fleeing together, coupled with my existing marital memories of him, our gestures and movements had grown familiar. Yen Shua, however, showed no discomfort whatsoever. He casually smoothed his robe, lowered his eyes to look at me, and suddenly said, Since we did not return to our ancestral lands this time, I haven't had the chance to inscribe your name in the ancestral hall. You calling me brother is actually improper. Only then did I notice that since this morning, he hadn't once called me sister. Instead, he used my given name, Man. In my past life, the Marquis Yen loved calling me that, repeatedly calling me Man. I suppressed a flicker of unease within my heart. I addressed him differently, Your Lordship. Only then did Yen Shua relax his furrowed brow, as if a heavy shackle of concern had been released. He gave a rare, faint smile, his lips pressed together. Just then, the sound of carriages halting reached our ears. Turning, I saw our humble cottage suddenly bathed in radiant splendor. A beauty in simple robes stepped down from a fine carriage, supported by her maidservant. Before she spoke, a faint, cool fragrance wafted toward me, instantly revealing her identity. A descendant of the Han dynasty of Central Plains, Princess Suha. The moment she saw Yen Shua, she fell to her knees, weeping, Thank heavens Lord Yen is here. I beg you to save my life. Unexpectedly, this twist of fate, Yen Shua intending to take me back to our ancestral lands to restore the royal lineage, led to an assassination attempt, altering our original course. It was here that we unexpectedly encountered Princess Suha, who happened to be passing through. With the Han dynasty now in decline, Princess Suha's unparalleled beauty had drawn many covetous eyes. General Yuan of Ji province, though advanced in years, shamelessly sought to marry Princess Suha. Yet due to the Yuan clan's influence, she had little choice but to consent. Now, encountering Lord Yen and his party felt like grasping a lifeline. Survival in turbulent times was difficult, especially for women. Princess Suha's fame throughout the Central Plains was, in truth, a poisoned arrow. Yen Shua showed no joy at seeing an old friend, but instead glanced at me several times before finally agreeing. He had originally been heading to Wuyang City, but traveling with women made progress difficult. He therefore arranged for a contingent from the city to escort us back to Xiangyang, while he himself rode ahead on a swift horse. Parting ways like this, each taking their own path, was the best solution. We had only traveled half a day. The sound of galloping horses reached us from outside. The soldier beside the carriage exclaimed in surprise, Your Excellency! I lifted the curtain, and the cold air mingled with Yen Shua's scent drifted in. Snow clung to his eyelashes. It melted instantly with his breath. Yen Shua said, There was no ulterior motive in saving Suha. Firstly, she once served as a companion to me and my mother in her youth. So there is a bond of childhood friendship. Second, we share the same father. Her mother was once my father's court singer. Unbeknownst to anyone when she was presented to the Han Emperor, she was already pregnant and bore Suha. Though we siblings are many, we are still blood kin. I felt compelled to save her once. This is a private matter of the inner quarters. A secret scandal of the royal house. I did not wish to tell you, but I feared you might misinterpret my actions. After this explanation, Yan Shuo exhaled deeply and unfastened the tiger pendant from his waist, handing it to me. Whoever bears this tiger pendant within Yan's borders is regarded as if the Marquis of Yan himself were present. He said, in my absence, carry this pendant. No one will dare wrong you. Anyone who shows you disrespect, kill them without mercy. After speaking, he gazed deeply at me. Then he turned his horse to leave. He had ridden halfway through the storm just to say these words. Yet in my past life, these words alone had been enough. This departure meant more campaigns and battles. Months, perhaps half a year, would pass before we met again. The battlefield knows no mercy. I could scarcely distinguish past from present, only straightening to call after him, Your Excellency. Yan Shuo turned in the blizzard, meeting my serene smile. I said, travel safely. I'll await your triumphant return in Xiangyang City, just as I had done countless times before. I stood at the gates of Xiangyang Palace, lantern in hand, waiting for his return. Come back safely. Once Yan Shuo departed, war indeed erupted once more. Snow ceased in Xiangyang City as spring arrived. Flowers faded, and summer solstice came. After learning the true relationship between Princess Suha and Yan Shuo, I couldn't help but find it amusing whenever I recalled how Princess Suha had once been so vexed in my past life. Though Yan Shuo was consumed by war, he still sent me letters. Each one began with the same respectful opening, Dearest Princess. I was not oblivious. His mannerisms increasingly mirrored the Yan Shuo of my past life. Perhaps he too had long since remembered that he, like me, carried memories of that former existence. Yet this was no misfortune, it was precisely heaven's gift of a second chance. As the weather turned cool, Yan Shuo's letters ceased, and I surmised he was already journeying home. After shopping in the marketplace, I thought about how I could begin welcoming Yan Shuo to Xiangyang Palace tomorrow. It was already dusk, with 1,000 lamps lighting the streets. Suddenly, I heard someone call my name from behind, just the word full. I turned abruptly, somewhat incredulous. At the end of the long street, amidst the bustling market smoke, Yan Shuo stood there, clad in iron armor, looking utterly out of place as he gazed at me from afar. He had returned far sooner than expected. At first, he strode toward me, his pace quickening, until he was practically running. In the blink of an eye, he was before me. He swept me up by the waist, twirling me once in the air before reluctantly setting me down. I missed you so much, man, he said. More than when I conquered 10 cities. Only now do I know how deeply longing can cut. Those words were a complete confession. Yan Shuo had also remembered his past life. Tall and imposing, he had to bend down to meet my gaze. A prince of war, stripped of all his martial aura, he bowed his head in apology. In my past life, I failed to recognize your brilliance. Like a foolish creature, I was arrogant, neglecting and ignoring you for years. It was you, man, who accommodated me all along. Only in my dreams did I gradually recall that life, realizing the immense wrongs I had inflicted upon you. Each time I think of it, I wish I could go back and beat my former self soundly. That you refuse to marry me in this life and instead choose to be my sworn brother is only natural. But man, my heart belongs to you. I cannot be your sworn brother. Even without remembering our past life, I could never be your sworn brother, my heart would still belong to you. He bowed his head, their foreheads touching, a glisten in his eyes. I wonder if our man would be willing to give me a chance to start over. The wind swept down the long street, carrying someone's new melody farther still. I said nothing, only watched him. I merely stepped back 2 paces, slightly bending my knees, and offered a graceful smile. Welcome home, Your Highness. It was just like countless times before, the words I'd wait to say when Yen Shuo returned. Our eyes met, and a silent understanding between us was the answer. A brand new life. I was willing to start over with him. Yen Shuo bent low before me, intending to carry me back to Shangyang Palace. Feeling the steady, youthful strength beneath me, I finally heard the line from the new melody. And it was precisely that one line. A familiar feeling, the swallow's return. The end.